There is an old saying from the Rabbi that he once said, without leaven in sight, we have to live with the times. And when he said this, it was not clear what he meant, but the Chassidim explained that it means to live with the Parsha of the week. I could say that in Australia, we have really lived with the Parsha of the week, because in Australia, at least in Melbourne, everyone started wearing masks again in the public areas and the inside, indoors. And of course, the Parsha that we read is the Parsha where Moshe masks himself as he approaches the burning bush. Vayaster Moshe panav, and Moshe hides his face as he approaches the burning bush. There was this story they once said about there was a story once they said about a collector who comes to a city and he's collecting funds for his institution, and he's taken around with a shamash, with an assistant. The assistant took him around, and they were coming to various houses, and they come to one house that belonged to a rich individual, and the shamash, the assistant, said, "No, don't bother even trying here. This fellow never gives." He says, what do you mean he never gives? He says, "Well, you'll see what I mean." As they're approaching the house, they see the curtains start to draw. The curtains start to draw closed. And this man had a habit that he would look out the window, and as soon as he could see someone that was dressed like in a shul, someone's collecting for something, he would immediately close the windows and tell his wife, "Just tell your husband to come home." And of course, this happened. Shortly as they approached the door, curtains were closed, knocked on the door, husband's not home. And as they left, the rabbi, the collector, said to his assistant, "You know, this episode reminds me of something, and it helps me understand something that the Chazal wrote down." I said, "What is it?" Our rabbis tell us that that means that when to entertain guests, it's greater than entertaining the presence of Hashem. And that we know from the story of Abraham, of Abraham, guests. He tells Hashem, "Wait as I entertain my guests." He said, "But I always wonder, where do you see this? How do you see this displayed in modern day times, that entertaining guests is greater than Kabbalah's punishment?" He says, "Now I have an understanding of it." He says, because when Moshe Rabbeinu was approaching that burning bush, and he was about to greet, or the Shekhinah was about to greet him, it says he covered his face, just his face. It doesn't say he covered anything more. He said, but this gentleman, when it comes to entertaining guests, he covers everything. He closes the curtain completely. He says, "I've now gained an understanding in Geveit HaChmas in Kabbalah's punishment." Having said that, as a light note, as an also b'tichasa, we'll go into the Parsha itself. The Parsha of Vaeira is a sequel with Parshas Boy, the week after. For the next 2 weeks, we'll be traveling through the Jewish people's journey as the 10 plagues take their hold in Egypt. How many of the plagues take place in this week's Parsha, Parshas Vaeira? There are 7. The first 7 of the 10 plagues appear. The next Parsha, Parshas Boy, will have the remaining 3. And you may have heard this from me before, but an easy way of remembering that is that the word Vaeira, the Parsha Vaeira, begins with 2 letters, Vav and Aleph. The numerical value of Vav is 6 and Aleph is 1, together making 7. Therefore, the first 7 plagues you'll find in Vaeira. The Parsha of Boy, which follows that, has 2 letters, base Aleph, 2 and 1, which are 3. So the remaining 3 plagues remain in Parshas Boy. That's next week's parasha. What are the three plagues that we will see in Parshas Vaeira? There'll be the harshest ones. There'll be the Arveh, the Choshev, and Makas B'Choros. But this week we have the first 7. In the parsha itself, we have something quite strange. Every name of a parsha tells you the content, just like a Gemara tells you the content of that Masechta. So therefore, the parsha of Vaeira means I have revealed or I will reveal. What's the correct translation? What's Vaeira mean? Past tense or present tense? Past, present, or future? Which one does it mean?
Future.
What's the simple translation of Vaeira el Abraham el Yitzchak el Yaakov? How do we translate that?
I will.
It means, the simple meaning is past tense. When you learn this pasuk, the very second verse of the parsha, Vayedaber Elokim el Moshe, and God spoke to Moshe, Vayomer Elav, and he says, Ani Hashem. And the very next words are, Vaeira el Abraham vel Yitzchak vel Yaakov. And I appeared, past tense. How do you know it's past tense? In grammar, in Hebrew, we have what's known as the Vav HaHipuch. It's called the reversing Vav. It changes tenses from past to present, of past to future, or future to past. If it would have said Vaeira with a shvav, it would mean I will appear. But the comments underneath the Vav changes it from future to past. Vaeira, and I appear. It's very important. This is one of the basic rules of grammar. So if you translate this verse, and I will appear, it's wrong, totally wrong. And the verse is telling us, Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, I did appear to Avraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov with my name, Kollel Shakai. But Shmi Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Lo Nodati. By that name I was not known to them. The name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, of Hashem, by that name I was not known. Anyone who wants a chumash, there are plenty of chumash and you can look inside with them. Now, when you think about it, what does that mean exactly? We go to Rashi, and Rashi explains. We do this each year. I promised Avraham Avinu. I told him about the amazing rewards that the land of Israel that I'm going to take you in, but I didn't fulfill it. It says Rashi, I promised the Avos, the Hivtachti Havtachos, to say to them, I said to them, Kollel Shakai, Shin Daled Yud, but Lo Kiyanti, I haven't fulfilled it. Ushmi Hashem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the name of God, I was not known by that name to them. So the question that you could ask here is a very simple one. This parsha is about Hashem revealing himself to Moshe with the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. He's going to fulfill his promise. He's going to take this generation out. At this stage, they thought they were going to get to Canaan. Actually, it's the next generation, but they're going to come out of Eretz Mitzrayim. They're going to come out of the land of Egypt. So if they're going to come out and they're going to have their Gilui, but it wasn't given to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, why on earth would the parsha be known as Vaeira? Vaeira is a negative symbol of this week's parsha because it's telling us what he didn't give to the forefathers. Vaeira is all about, this is the way I showed myself to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I didn't fulfill my promise to them. But what I'm doing to you, Moshe, is different. So why would you call a parsha a name Vaeira after something that did not happen, rather than what did happen? This whole parasha is about the exodus of Egypt. It's the exodus. It's the time where you're going to read the 7 of the plagues that are going to devastate Egypt, that has tormented the Jewish people for hundreds of years. Why would you call it Vaeira? Good question.
Yeah.
This question was asked at a Farbrengen in Tovshin Nun Beis by the Lubavitcher Rabbi. He asked this question. Why give it such a name? And he answered it with a Gemara in Shavuos. The Gemara in Shavuos, I forget the daf, but there the Gemara says the following. Yofer koyach haben mikoyach ha'av. Greater is the strength of the son than the strength of the father. Yofer koyach haben mikoyach ha'av. You see, sometimes a father has certain talents, has certain abilities, and then you see the son far surpasses his father in those abilities. That's how the Gemara puts it. Yofer koyach haben mikoyach ha'av. The letter men, mikoyach ha'av, is translated as not from, but rather then. Yofer koyach haben mikoyach ha'av. Better is the strength of the son than the strength of the father. That's the simple meaning. In one of the Ma'amorim of the Rabbi, Tov Sheresh and Zion, the Rabbi explains a different slant on this. And he translates it in the sense that the men does not mean more than, but from. And it means as follows. If you see a son, if you see a child, an offspring, excelling in what he does, absolutely amazing, and it's far greater than you've ever seen his father in anything he does, and you wonder to yourself, where did that son get that? We never saw it in the father. We never saw it in his parents. The answer is that itself comes from the parents. What you're seeing in the son, what you're seeing in that child, that itself comes from the parent. Not more than, but from. But we didn't see it. Doesn't matter. It's latent. It's in that person. It's in the parent. You didn't see it, but it's there. That the strength, that amazing ability of the son to express himself or to play or to do whatever he can, it's latent in the father. You just didn't see it. With that explanation, that deeper explanation of what Yofer koyach says the Rebbe, we can answer this question about why the Parshas of Vaeira is called Vaeira. It's true. Hashem did not reveal himself by his holy name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei to Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. That's true. They heard promises. They didn't see the fulfillment of those promises. That's true. But in the Kel Shakai, in the name of God, which you see there in verse 3, El Kel Shakai, Aleph Lamed, Dal Shin Daled Yud, in those two names of God, there was latent, there was buried, hidden, the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. You didn't see it, but it was there. When I revealed myself to Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, even though it was on a lower level, but within that level, there was contained the seeds that would germinate later and flower in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's why well can the parsha be called Vaeira.
But they knew the name, it just wasn't revealed to them in that form.
Correct. Lo nodati lahem. I was not known. I was not attached to them by that. It was buried, if you like. Even the strength of being attached to that was buried in the Kel Shakai. What's also fascinating is those of you who like gematrias, who like numbers, will find this fascinating. Look at the words in your Chumash, Kel Shakai, Aleph Lamed, Shin Daled Yud. The Aleph and Lamed, those two letters of God's name, add up to what? Aleph and Lamed is 31, exactly. Shin, Daled, and Yud is 314. What's 314 and 31? 345, correct. Now that is an absolutely amazing number, 345, because which man has a name that is exactly the gematria of 345? Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe. Moshe is Mem, Shin, and He. Says the Chassam Sofer that when Hashem revealed himself to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, there was already a hint. There was already a hint to Moshe Rabbeinu there that they would come forth from the loins of these great ancestors, a man who would take out the Jewish people out of Egypt. This is brought in the works of the Chassam Sofer. But what I find fascinating is how it parallels, how it matches so beautifully the words of the Rebbe. Because the Rebbe was saying that the strength, the ability that Moshe Rabbeinu later on had was coming from the promise of Kel Shakai, from what he told to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And therefore, how wonderful that, in fact, the name Kel Shakai has the gematria of Moshe, and therefore allows for that unbelievable gilui, the revelation, to take place later on, years later. But some Sofer goes even further there, and he says as follows. He says that when we look at the name that Hashem has, which he's about to reveal to Moshe, is the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Hashem's name, the holy name, which we can't say. We can't say Yud, we can't say the rest of it, not allowed to read it. But how do we read it? We read it as Adoi, and then we add the word Noi, right? That's how we read it. Aleph Daled Nun Yud. It's called Hashem Kikri'ato, the Hashem Kiktivato. The Chazal call it, it's the holy name of Hashem, which is written one way and read another. The way it's written, it's Yud Kei Vav Kei. The way it's read is Aleph Daled Nun Yud. What do the two together make? The two together make how much as a gematria? Yud Kei Vav Kei is exactly 26. We all know that. It's the holy name of Hashem has 26. Yud Kei Vav Kei. Aleph Daled Nun Yud is how much? 65. The two together, Hashem, the way it's read and the way it's written, Vaeira, and the way it's read and the way it's written together, make up what number? What's 65 and 26? 91. That's right. What's so special about the number 91? There is a fascinating Gemara that says, he who answers Amen after a person who says a bracha, it's greater than the one who said the bracha himself. Wow, amazing. A beautiful incentive to answer Amen after a bracha. Why is it so great? The Gemara, the Chazal say this. You say Amen, it's like greater than the person who said the bracha. And they explain as follows. I think it's the Marshal on the Gemara who explains that the person who said the bracha initially said Hashem's name once. Baruch atah Hashem. Elokeinu melech haolam, our God. But he said Hashem's name once. Yud Kei Vav Kei. But when you answer Amen, which has three letters, Aleph, Mem, and Nun, which has a gematria of 1 and 40 and 15. Aleph, Mem, and Nun. What's that up to? What's 1 and 40 and 50? 91. He who answers Amen after a person's bracha incorporates in his answer Hashem's name written and said. Yud Kei Vav Kei and Amen. Aleph Daled Nun Yud. This is, I think, brought down in the Marshal and the Gemara. The Chassam Sofer, however, uses it for our posuk here in Parshas Vaeira. And he says that Hashem's name, the way it's read and written, add up to 91. If we take that Yud Kei Vav Kei, which the Avos were not privy to, they were not privy to see this fulfillment of Yud Kei Vav Kei, neither in the reading of it or the writing of it. And if you take that away from Kel Shakai, take it away from the 345, that's Moshe's name. If you take it away from Kel Shakai, you're left with a number that is, all right, you might need a pen and paper to work this out. But if you take 345 and you subtract 91, who's quick in maths? 345 minus 91? No. 345 minus 91. 254. That's right. Exactly 254. Which is the word in Hebrew for neder, a vow. Says the Chassam Sofer, why is it that when we take away the Yud Kei Vav Kei, both written and read, and we take it away from the Kel Shakai, why do we end up with neder? Because what we're saying is that you, the Avot, the Avos, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, you never saw the gilui of Yud Kei Vav Kei. You didn't see the fulfillment of that promise with Hashem's name written and read, and therefore you were left with the neder. You were left with the vow that God promised you to take your children out of Egypt to bring them to the land unfulfilled. The neder was still there. Hence, says the Chassam Sofer, it's hinted to by the fact that without the Yud Kei Vav Kei written and read, the Kel Shakai, the gilui that I gave you, is still unfulfilled. it still remains at the realm of neder, non-adulteration. Is that too much maths? I don't know if people like hearing these numbers, but anyway, Sam Sofer is a master at this, by the way, and not just at numbers, of course, but he explains how this fits in. When Hashem therefore says, the Gamani Shamati in Pasuk Hey, I've heard the cry of the children of Israel, who the Egyptians are enslaving, but as Brisi, and I've remembered my covenant. And then, Lachain Emor Livnei Israel, therefore tell the children of Israel, Ani Hashem, I am God. Tell the Jewish people the Gilui of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Can you see that? There's an emphasis here, Ani Hashem. These words, Ani Hashem, appear over and over again. In the first pasuk, Vayedaber Elokim El Moshe, Vayomer Elav Ani Hashem. In the very first verse of Vaeira, we see again that expression, Ani Hashem. What's interesting is that we know that the name Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, is Midas HaRachamim. And we know that the Midah of Din is represented by the name Elokim. In the very first verse, we see this merging of the two. Elokim speaks to Moshe, Midas Hadin. And then, Vayomer Elav, he says to him, Ani Hashem, Midas Rachamim. Now Rashi says that, why does it do that? It's because Hashem is getting strict with Moshe. Moshe, you're complaining? You're telling me, why have you done bad to these people? You're getting impatient. Oh, you're not like the forefathers. You're not like Abraham, your ancestor. I told him you'll have a great nation, and then I told him to do the Akedah, and he bound his son on the altar, and he didn't ask questions, and you're asking questions. Like God speaks harshly. But then Vayom Elav Ani Hashem. Then he softens, Hashem softens. Ani Hashem. Midas HaRachamim. Says Rashi, I'm also faithful to pay a good reward. Ne'eman l'shalom sachatoi. Mishalchim l'fanai. Some Sofer, however, says, why this change? Why do I need Midas Hadin and Midas HaRachamim in the same verse? He said, because the story of the Exodus of Egypt is a story that comes to banish the old question that people have. How could it be that the same God can give so much goodness and how there could be so much badness? Egypt couldn't understand that. The world couldn't understand that. How can the same God, the same Eibishter, make someone live and give him a healthy life and the other person could be dying, who could be a young person? How could it be? It doesn't make sense. And therefore, Hashem is saying right at the beginning of Vaeira, the 7 plagues that we're going to read about, Vayedaber Elokim El Moshe, and God says to Moshe, Vayomer Elav, and he says to him, Ani Hashem. It's the same Elokim and Ani Hashem. That's why we say at the end of Yom Kippur, we declare our faith in Hashem, not just for the good things, but for the bad thing too. We say, Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem. How many times do we say that? Over and over again. The declaration that there is no difference between Midas Hadin and Midas HaRachamim. It's the same HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why at the end of Yetzias Mitzrayim, what was the finale of Yetzias Mitzrayim? What was the finale? What was the final, if you like, exodus of Egypt? When did that happen? Kriyas Yamsuf, splitting of the sea. Finally, at the splitting of the sea, you see those awesome words. Yimincha Hashem nedori bakoyach, Yimincha Hashem tiratzoyev. Your right hand, God, that wrecks, that devastates the enemy. Your right hand, Hashem, that is glorified in strength. Why was that? Why were those words the epic? Why was that the epitome of the Exodus of Egypt? Because in those words you see Midas Hadin and Midas HaRachamim working together. Let's go to Pasuk above. L'chein amar l'bnei Yisrael, tell the children of Israel, Ani Hashem, and I will take you, Eschem, I will take you out, Hotzeisi Eschem, mitachas siblois Mitzrayim, from the burdens of Egypt. V'itzalti Eschem, and I'll save you, me'avodasom, from their bondage. Next words. V'ga'alti Eschem, and I will redeem you. Israel and Tuyel Shvatim, with amazing miracles, great judgments, an outstretched arm. And then the final word, V'lakachti Eschem v'la'am, I will take you to me as a nation. How many expressions of redemption do we have here? We have 4. The Talmud Yerushalmi says, in a few months' time, everybody here will be drinking 4 cups of wine, men and women. It's a mitzvah for both. And we will be drinking those 4 cups of wine because of the pasuk or the psukim we just read now. What are the 4 expressions of redemption? The hitzeisim, the hitzalti, the gaalti, the lakachti. These are the 4 expressions of redemption. But have you ever wondered, why do we need 4 expressions of redemption? It just takes one expression. I took you out. Yitzias Mitzrayim. Why do we need to have 4 expressions of redemption? How do you explain that to your children at the Haggadah, the night of Pesach? One of the integral mitzvahs is having 4 cups of wine. It's so important that it says that the poorest of the poor is to sell the shirt on his back to be able to have the 4 cups of wine. This is a major mitzvah. But how do we explain 4 expressions of redemption? I'll explain it based on one of my favorite explanations that for years I've liked this one, and it comes from the son of the Chassam Sofer, the Ksav Sofer, Rabbi Ram Shmuel Binyamin Sofer. It was the outside, I think it was just last week perhaps. So the Ksav Sofer says a beautiful understanding. And I believe that if you say this on Seder night, you have fulfilled the mitzvah of Haggadah. Just to say this pshat of the Ksav Sofer. It's really, really nice, straightforward and nice explanation. Says the Ksav Sofer, what are these 4 expressions? Why do we need 4 expressions of redemption? He says as follows. Before we start his explanation, let's give a bit of background. In the beginning of Shemos, the parsha we read yesterday, it says a new king rose over Egypt. Asher lo yoda es Yosef, who did not know Joseph, did not know Yosef. And he said to his people, come, let's deal wisely with these people. We've got to do something, you know. They're getting stronger, they're going to overtake us, they're going to kick us out of the country. Vayokom melech chadosh al Mitzrayim, it says, and a new king arose over Egypt, who did not know Yosef. So what's the pshat? What does it mean he did not know Yosef? Did he not know? Did he really know? And of course, we learn each year, we learn the Chumash Rashi, that brings the 2 explanations, the 2 different opinions, depending on whether it was a new king or not a new king. One opinion says it was a new king, Chodesh Manash, and it was a new king, so he wouldn't have known Yosef. He did not know how Yosef benefited the country. We'll come to that. We'll have a look at that. Second explanation is it's the same old king. Must have lived a long time. Asher lo yodas Yosef then means not that he did not know Yosef, he didn't want to know Joseph. He pretended. Asa atzmo ki'ilu lo yoda. What does Rashi say? So Rashi says, Asa atzmo ki'ilu lo yoda. He pretended as if he never heard of Yosef. That's the second explanation. But both explanations learn Asher lo yodas Yosef mean he did not recognize Yosef, he did not want to recognize Yosef. And then what does he do? He says to his people, this nation is stronger, greater than us. We've got to do something. The solution, and Bilam comes along with his advice because he had 3 advisors, Bilam, Yisro, and Ego, and we know the story. The Chassam Sofer has a question, and he asks, why do we need to know Asher lo yodas Yosef? Why is that important? Why is that integral to the story? Asher lo yodas Yosef, he did not know Yosef. It's true. He did not know Yosef, didn't want to appreciate the goodness that Yosef had done to his country. But why? Why do we need to know that? What would be missing if the pasuk simply said, and a new king arose over Egypt, and he said to his people, the people of Israel are just growing, and it's a thorn in our sides, we cannot take it, let's deal, we're going to deal with it. This is a big issue. Why do we need to say even? How is that important in the story? The Chassam Sofer says the following beautiful answer. He says, you know, the Egyptians weren't stupid. The Egyptians had feelings too. They were, you know, so to speak, normal as well. And they knew that the ancestor of these people was Jacob, was Yaakov, who, when coming into the country of Egypt, broke the famine in its back, broke the back of the famine. He comes into Egypt, the river Nile starts to flow, And the irrigation system of Egypt works. There's no more famine, and here they are, they're being fed and sustained. The whole world is now being sustained by this food bowl of the whole world, which is Egypt. Yaakov basically saved the country, and in a sense saved the world. And here they're being told to now take the Jewish babies and throw them into the river, the very river which was blessed by the great Tzaddik Yaakov who comes into Egypt. It says that some Sofer, Pharaoh faced an uphill public relations battle. How can I do that? How can we get the people of Egypt to do such a thing? It's horrendous. It's just shocking. It's horrendous. The whole idea of it is bad, number one. But number two, apart from being cruel, it's just totally wrong. Totally wrong, because look what they've done to our country. They've built our country. The father of this man, he's not. It says, look, some Sofer Pharaoh needed to work feverishly to change history. The history books of the children of the Egyptians learning in his country had to have a different record of what happened. And therefore, all the books that had said that there was once a man called Jacob who came to this country and blessed it, and the river Nile flowed, and we were there for the most prosperous country, all that was changed. History books were completely changed. And what now came up was a different story. There once was a pharaoh in Egypt, and he was so great, he was greater than the Nile itself. And he has a dream. Rabbi Vaeira says in the Parshas of Miketz that when he has a dream that he's standing on the river, Al Hayoir, normally translated by the river, but literally translated as on the river. Says the Medrash, Rabbi Vaeira brings it, Pharaoh worshipped not just the Nile, he worshipped himself as the god of the Nile. And he was strengthened in that by the fact that he was given a bracha, that whenever he would walk down to the Nile, the river Nile would flow. That was a bracha given by Yaakov. Not that he should worship himself, but he used that. And now history was being revised. How is history being revised? By saying, you know what? This idea of Jacob coming here and blessing the country is a fantasy. It's a fairy tale. Never happened. This is simply me. It's Paroi. Al Hayoir. I am the God of the Nile. And the pasuk says in Tanakh, Li Yeori ve'ani asitini. I made the Nile. That's how he regards himself. And that's why he dreams Al Hayoir, that he's on the river. And that's why when he comes to Joseph and he asks Joseph, I had a dream, how to explain it? He changes the words. He says, not Al Hayoir, he says, I was standing Al Sefat Hayoir, standing by the banks of the river. He's a little bit embarrassed to say that he was standing on his God. But the Medrash says that's what he did say. And contrasts this with Yaakov Avinu, who Hashem stands over him. Behine, Hashem, Nitzov, Alov, etc., etc. Now, says it some Sofer. That's what Pharaoh was doing. All the books were changed. The history records were changed. Egypt was now to learn that the Jews and the saint, the Yaakov, the great Tzaddik, had no role in our success. It's me, me, me. And that was the only way he could now persuade his country to take these Jewish children, the menace to the threat to the country, and drown them and get rid of them. And when you think about it, Yamach Shimon, the Nazis, did similar things. The public relations exercise. They tried to cover over the camps. They tried to say we were good. In fact, there's one or two shuls, beautiful shuls that they specially left because they wanted to show, this is, etc. Terrible. This is called the uprising, the public relations. And this went on for years in the Sturm and other magazines where they incited the public against the Jews. They're our threat, they're taking our money, they're taking it, etc., etc. This was history repeated itself so many times, this type of thing. Yeah. Says that some Sofer, that's why the Pasuk says, Asher lo yodas Yosef. The reason the Pasuk needed to say Asher lo yodas Yosef is to tell us that Pharaoh needed to spread this ideology that we don't know Joseph, we don't know Yaakov. This is rubbish. This is fantasy to believe. And that's the only way he could get the Gzeira of Kol Habein Hayiloid Hayoira Tashlichu, throw the children into the river. There was one exception. And who was the exception to this ideology? Someone took very, didn't like this at all. And who was it? It was the daughter of Pharaoh, Basia. How do we know that? Because we read about Basia going down to the river. Vaeira bas Paroi, she goes down to wash al-Hayor by the river. And already Rashi's bothered by this expression. You don't wash by a river, you wash in the river. What does it mean? She went to wash by the river. You don't wash by the banks, you wash in the river. Everyone's bothered by this. Rashi has a pshat, and Ramban has a pshat, and Sforno has a pshat, the Medrash. Everyone's got a pshat on this. Rashi does a cut and paste job. He says, Vaeira bas Paroi, not Lirchotz al-Hayor, Vaeira Paroi went, the daughter of Paroi went down, al-Hayor by the river, Lirchotz, to wash. So he takes the word Lirchotz, to wash, away from al-Hayor, and he puts, went down by the river, Lirchotz, to wash. That's how Rashi gets around it. But others, and the Sofer says, perhaps, or the Gemara, I should say, says, what does it mean she went down to wash? The Gemara answers that she wasn't going down to swim. She wasn't going down to have a bath. She was going down to wash herself of the idolatry of her father's house. Amazing. This is the Gemara, brings that in the Gemara Sofer. Where did she go to wash? She wanted to wash herself of the idolatry of her father's house. And I think it's some Sofer who says, if that's the case, the word al-Hayor fits in beautifully without changing the order. And listen to how he does this. We said before that al-Hayor was in the dream of Pharaoh. Why does he dream the word al-Hayor? Because he doesn't just dream that he's standing by the river, he stands on the river, because he worships himself as the god of the Nile, as the god of the country. That's how he worships himself. That's how he wants to brainwash the rest of his country. So the word al-Hayor means on the river. She goes down to the river. What is she doing? She's bathing herself. Well, not bathing herself. She wants to wash. What is she washing? Al-Hayor. She's washing the ideology of her father being God of the river. Don't have to do any cut and paste now. Have I explained myself well? Do you understand what I'm saying? She goes down and she washes, not by the river, she wants to wash the ideology, the idolatry of her father, which is al-Hayor on the river. She says, I don't go for this. I don't go for this at all. Says the Sofer, based on this Gemara, we can understand, number one, why the daughter of Pharaoh chooses this point of time in history to make a conversion and renounce idolatry. What got into her head all of a sudden? She wakes up one morning, I'm going down, I'm going to wash myself up the idolatry of my father. Why did she do that now? You want to become a Balshut, you're an Egyptian princess. All of a sudden it got into your head that you want to now wipe yourself of the idolatry. Why? What's that? What happened now? Did you go to a Vaeira or something? What did she do? That all of a sudden she's washing herself of the idolatry. Number two, says Sofer, why does the Gemara use the expression that she goes to wash herself from Gilule Beisoviha, from the idolatry of her father's house? Why didn't it say in the Gemara simply, she wanted to wash herself of idolatry? Why add the words, Migilule Beisoviha, from the idolatry of her father's house? Why? Why was that important? Says Sofer, how beautiful, based on this Gemara, we can understand that. You know, when she picked herself up and said, I'm not going for this. I'm not going to agree with this. When did she make up her mind to give up the idolatry of her father's house? It's when the decree came to take the Jewish children and drown them. She said, no. She said, that's the final straw, so to speak. She said, that I cannot take. To take the children, the descendants of the man Yaakov, of Jacob, the Jewish tzaddik, who saved our country. We're going to take his children, his descendants, and drown them in the very river that was blessed and prosperity for that? I can't agree with that. Oh, but my father says he's a God. My father says it's a fantasy. She says, that's it. It's time to get rid of my father's ideology. She now uses this moment to wash herself, to wash off the idolatry. But not all idolatry, says the Sofer. She may not have been ready to give up all idolatry. But you know what idolatry she gets rid of? Gilulei Beisofim. Why does the Gemara mention the idols of her father's house? Because the Gemara is saying that this was what she wanted to rid herself of. That her father was the god of the Nile, that he's standing alayah. It's rubbish. It's not true. Yaakov is really the one who saved the day. I'm now going to completely quash this. And when she sees the baby, she sees the little box with the baby, and she goes and rescues it. Yes?
Where does this fit in the timeline as well? Where does that fit in the timeline of where
This is right next to the Vaeira, right in time where he talks about the decree of throwing the babies into the river. That's where she steps forward. That's what prompts her. That's and that's when the new king comes before that, just before that. Yeah. Sorry, yes, because the new king comes, makes these Vaeiras, but according to the Pshat that it's the same king who worships himself as a god, it fits in beautifully. That's the same king who we read about, the dreaming that he's on the thing, that he's on the river, and he's the god of the Nile, and she sees this, and she says, "Oh, my dad is in a state of denial. I mean, this is just wrong." Sorry, that might be a joke. And she says, "I'm not going for a bar of this. This is wrong." And she goes and she says to the children.
If you look at the word I O,
Yes.
if you open up, you say Yireh Hashem.
Yes.
She has become Yireh Hashem.
Very nice. We've just heard someone from the audience here who has mentioned that the word Hayah, Hey Yud Aleph Resh, if you take the Hey and put it at the end of the word, you get Yireh Hashem, the fear of God. So some people use the Od to be an idol worshiper. She used it in the good sense to become a Yireh Hashem. You should go from your contribution. You should write a book. So here we have this concept of Batya totally going against her father. Now, why I mention this to some Sofer is because his son, the Ksav Sofer, uses this idea of the public relations of the cruelty, of the wrongness, to explain the question that we asked before: why do we need 4 expressions of redemption? Why is it so important? When we sit at the Seder night in a few weeks' time, or a few months' time, we have 2 hours, when we're going to sit there and we're going to talk about why do we need 4 expressions, listen to the Ksav Sofer. First expression was, I will take you out of mitachas sivlois Mitzrayim, from under the burdens of Egypt. You've got the pasuk there, you have the Chumash, you'll see the word sivlois Mitzrayim, from under the burdens of Egypt. Now, you know that in Hebrew the word sivlois could mean burden. But what else can sivlois mean? What do you say, and how do you say in Hebrew, I can't stand it? Ani lo yachol lisbol, I can't take it. In Hebrew you say, can't take it. It's not just a physical bondage. It's not a physical burden. Lisbol is something I can't take it. When you say a person has no patience, you say he has not got any savla. No, he can't take it. He's got no patience. Says the Ksav Sofer. The first expression of redemption is, I will take you out from Sivlois Mitzrayim. Sivlois Mitzrayim, from the fact that you couldn't bear what you were seeing. What were the Jews waking up to? They were waking up to reports about cruelty, taking Jewish children, throwing them into the Nile, into the very river that had been blessed by Yaakov Avinu through his bracha, through his greatness, his kedusha. Hashem blessed that the river Nile should rise. This is what they're doing to us. Look how much we gave to the world. Look how much we gave to the world. Medicine, economics, startups, everything else. You can translate it in any way you want. And the world looks at it and say, Jews, boycott us. That's all they do to us. It says, except Sofer, that Hashem's first thing was to take away the stigma, the horrible feeling that that children would ask their fathers and mothers why they're doing this to us, why they're burning our shawls, why they're killing us, stabbing us in the streets. Look how much we do for them. We treat their own people in our hospitals. What are they doing to us? It says, except Sofer, the first thing Hashem was said, I will take you out from the Sivlois Mitzrayim, from the things that you couldn't bear, just couldn't bear to see it. Then the Hitzalti Eschem Avodosom. I'll save you from the work, from the bondage. That's the physical bondage. Poshet Kipshuta. Avoida. That's the Avodas Perech. That's the bondage, literal bondage that they were under. That's the second. The third redemption, the third expression of redemption is the Go'alti, and I will redeem you. But look at the word Go'alti. Look at the next few words in the Apostle. I will redeem you, Bizroya Netuya, Ubishvatim Gedol, with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. Says the Ksav Sofer, the Geul of Egypt could have happened with Hashem simply granting Pharaoh, in the goodness of his heart, let them go free. In his goodness of his heart. The only problem then is, if the Jews got out, then we'd have to always say, thank you, Mr. Pharaoh, for letting us out. We'd have to say, not Hodol Hashem Kitov only, Hodol Paro Kitov. He helped us, he took us out of Egypt. Says the Ksav Sofer that this third expression, the Go'alti Esram, is to tell the Eden, that the Abish is telling the Eden, I'm not just going to take you, I'm not just going to redeem you. When I redeem you, it's going to be with the most amazing Shvatim Gedolim, the most amazing Zruyim Toya that the world has ever seen. The world will see something that they've never seen before. And that is so that he will never ever have to say thank you to any foreign power, not to power, nothing. You will not have to be Gomel Tov to him. And the fourth expression, and the greatest of all, was V'lakachti, and I will take you to me as a nation. And when did V'lakachti take place? V'lakachti takes place on Har Sinai. When Hashem says, instead of being Avdei Pharaoh, now you can say you are Avdei Hashem. Hallelujah, Avdei Hashem. Now you will be no longer the servants of Pharaoh, the servants of Hashem. And the Ksav Sofer says, of all the four redemptions, expressions of redemption, which is the greatest? The last one, the V'lakachti. And that's why we say, Kos Yeshuas Esau, what's the next few words? The cup of salvation, there were four cups. But which cup of salvation do I pick up and call the name of Hashem? It's the cup that we hold for Hallel Hagadol, the last cup that we say, the cup that we have on Hallel, in Haggadah or Kos Revi, I should say. That's where we say Hallel Hagadol, where we thank Hashem for the ability to have Torah mitzvahs. And furthermore, it says the Ksav Sofer, that only after the last expression of redemption do we find the words V'yidaitem, you will know that I'm Hashem your God who took you out of Egypt. The whole time, even after coming out of Egypt, the Eden still complained. And when they ran out of water, they said, why don't you take us out of Egypt, etc. There were complaints and complaints. But once Har Sinai was to take place, once you saw the Gilui on Har Sinai, then there was any more rejection of Moshe Rabbeinu. So then it was, says the Ksav Sofer, then you'll have the idea that you will know that I am Hashem. And yesterday, or 2 days ago, was the Yahrzeit of the Rabbi. So we should finish off by just telling everyone. Rambam brings down that the reason we have Emunah in Moshe Rabbeinu is not because of miracles, not because of this, not because of these extraordinary, wonderful things, even though Hashem said to perform them in front of you. And Rambam says clearly that based on miracles, you've always got a question afterwards. Maybe this, maybe that. As the Rambam puts it, Yesh Acharat Dofi. Dofi means Dofi v'safek. There's always an element of doubt. But what really clinched the Emunah in Moshe Rabbeinu? Vayaminu b'Hashem Moshe Abdo started off at Kriyas Yamsuf. But where did it really reach its peak? Mount Torah. When the Eibishter said to him and Moshe Rabbeinu, you know when they will know, and when they will really know, that you are my Shliach, that you are my Aved Hashem. They will see that when I talk to you, prayer at Mount Torah. That will be the picture. And that's why it says the Ksav Sofer, V'yidaitem clearly Hashem. When will you have the idea that I'm Hashem? That will happen after the V'lakachti, after I take you to me as a people. Thank you.